Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm George Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD. You're going to follow me on Twitter. It's Wednesday, July 3rd. We'll be taking a look at the 11 game. We got another large MLB slate up at tap, whatever. Tonight we got some 640 games. They're playing a lot of baseball today, right? There's a lot of props. There's a lot of pick'em that you should have gotten on board early this morning. Right? We have the props and pick'em tool. You can get here at RotoGrinders with our statistical projections. Feel free to sign up to RotoGrinders Premium and check that out. We're running a special right now. $40 off your first month. Hit that link in the description. But if you're not going to do that, at least hit that thumb button. You got to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Remember, we got Grinders Live later today, 5 p.m. Eastern, followed by Crunch Time. And you got to check out Crunch Time for the weather updates. Although I don't think today, we may not have a problem today. But joining me this early this morning to take a first look at the slate is Taylor Smith, coming from the West Coast. So it's always appreciative that, get up a little bit early. And I look at the slate. It's very similar to, I think it's very similar to yesterday's slate where there's a whole bunch of pitch. I think there's a lot of pitching options. And then we got Coors, which stands out as, the hitting, the place for the hitting. But there's still some reasonably priced stacks that if you want to get a bit contrarian, we got a whole bunch of options. So, Taylor, pitching-wise, unlike yesterday, we really didn't have someone that was going to be like 30+% owned. But I think today that we may have one, but on the high end of the scale, we got Zach Wheeler, 9,800. We got Logan Gilbert, 9,400. But I think the most owned pitcher on the slate in this range, especially Chris Sale, 10-2. Can you put any knocks on what Chris Sale has been doing recently and why we shouldn't be playing him at 10-2?
No, not from his own numbers. He's been pretty perfect. Low walks, high strikeouts, low power, anything you'd want. He's not overly expensive. The matchup's not perfect. Like the Giants are pretty average for strikeouts. They have hit for power against lefties. So there's some risk, but you can say that for all of those top three that you mentioned. Wheeler against the Cubs and Gilbert against the Orioles. That's not an easy matchup at all. So I do think ownership's going to congregate pretty heavily around Sale. Not that Wheeler and Gilbert will be unowned, but he does look like a pretty clear SB1. My concern is with SB2 based on projections. I'm already pre-tilting the Carlos Rodon thing, so I guess we can get into that a little bit.
Right, because I think there's a lot of options outside of the top three, and I would rank those three, the three expensive options. I would put Sale 1. Wheeler 2, Gilbert 3. I'd rather play a pitcher against the Cubs than a pitcher against the Orioles, but I don't think I think there's a clear gap between Sale and the other two. But if you want to put like Wheeler and Gilbert, switch them around, I actually think the ownership may actually come in lower on these two guys. Like the bat has Gilbert at 19 and Wheeler at 15. I wouldn't be surprised if they both were some 12 to 15 and Sale was more likely to be like 40 to 45. So if there's a compelling reason, especially if you're playing Coors or, like a very popular one-off cheap bats or something, that maybe then you go off of Sale. But the construction differences between playing Sale over these guys, I don't think the 800 really does you anything dramatically different. So when in doubt, just play Chris Sale. But you talk about the SB2 options. I'm not sure if you're going to be playing two of these guys, right? Like there are ways to play a Sale Wheeler lineup. You may not like the bats that you're playing because they're probably going to be like the A's or the Tigers. And it's an 11-game slate, and most likely they aren't going to be the top scoring stack. But SB2, I think you mentioned Rodon. So let's talk about him in isolation, because I think there's a whole bunch of pitchers that are playable that are even cheaper than Rodon. Rodon in the bat projects as like almost as high as Sale. He has a 6.5 strikeout prop with pretty heavy juice. So I mean,
Yeah.
he definitely has strikeout upside. Let's can we both agree he has strikeout upside for sure? But the problem is, we take a look at his game log, is that while he'll strike out 9, 7, 8, he'll also give up like the equivalent amount of earned runs and hits in the process.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, like his strikeouts this season are down to like 23%. So he's pretty average. He's not what he was a couple of years ago when it was like 33 with San Francisco. Cincinnati's also been a much higher strikeout lineup against righties. And going back to the ownership thing, like last night, Heel was projected for like 30% ownership, but he came in, at least in higher stakes, he was closer to like 15. And Grayson Rodriguez was closer to like 45. So I think that's a similar thing to what we'll see tonight with like Gilbert and Sale. Like Sales should come in 40 plus, and I do think Gilbert's more likely to be around 10, if not lower, depending on what contest you're playing. The Rodon thing, I don't know. Like I kind of want to manually bump his projection down. I do use the bat for everything. So with cases like this where a guy, because the bat goes pretty far back with its sample sizes, a guy like this who was great 2 years ago, but has had injuries since then, might be a bit overprojected based on the long-term data. He's been good this season overall. The numbers are fine. His Sierra's under 4. He's been okay. His recent form's been poor. I think that might bump his ownership down a bit, kind of like Heels last night. I just don't really feel comfortable being well over the field on a guy like this that's projecting for some ownership. Price is good. Matchup's fine, but I'm a bit concerned his projection might inflate his ownership a little.
Right. I view Rodon as a high variance pitcher. And typically in baseball, I abide by Cheese's Robbie Ray rule, which he's coined in his $1 Million Musings, which obviously if you're a RotoGrinders premium member, you've been reading that every weekday for the past, decade. So definitely sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. And the Robbie Ray rule, because we all know old school Robbie Ray, either strikes out 12 or gives up 12 earned runs. That you want to play those types of people when they're low, when the field is less on them, and you want to play less of them when the field is more on them. And I think from your attitude that, we have the ownership around 18%. If the field gets confident enough, this could end up at 8,100. Anyone with a strikeout prop around 7 that's at 8,100 is definitely going to get some attention on the slate. But at 18, you may not mind it, but he starts coming in on an 11-game slate with 22 pitchers available, and especially if you're playing like the 121 or the 250 or the smaller field stuff, he's going to come in at 35% owned.
Yeah,
I'm much more likely, hey, if he puts up 30 points, then so be it. But if he comes out and gives up 6 earned runs, it's going to knock out a large portion of the field. So judge it as you may. I get the sense, I'm with you, Taylor, that although we have him at like 18 now, in large field, maybe he comes in at like 25, 28. And then it starts getting to the level where maybe I don't want to play that Sale Rodon the chalk Sale Rodon combo that a lot of people are. And we do have I think there are a lot of options that may not make you feel as good, but considerable savings, another 1K, 1,500 less. And you're not stuck like stacking in a similar way as the rest of the field. So the rest of these pitchers are like John Gray against San Diego, Michael Wacha against Tampa Bay, Dean Kramer against Seattle, David Festa at 6,700 against Detroit. We saw Davis Daniel did pretty decent in his last start. He's facing Oakland, and any pitcher against Oakland is worthwhile of consideration. Even if you want to take a shot on like a Joey Estes at a cheap price against the Angels, we got Ryan Pepio at 7,100 against the Royals. Not a very good matchup, but Pepio has like a 30+% strikeout rate. Dude, we have Shota Imanaga, a good pitcher, bad matchup against the Phillies. Kikuchi against Houston, another situation. Pretty good pitcher, bad matchup. Jordan Hicks, pretty good pitcher, bad matchup at 7,300. Out of all this groups of pitchers, I think they're all viable. If we put them into buckets, they'd at least make the C bucket. Do any of them stand out amongst like the ones? Two questions. Who stands out amongst this group? And two, would you consider playing like just two of these pitchers and just paying up whole hog at bats? Or do you feel like you need to have like at least like one of like the top tier, Sale, Gilbert, Wheeler, or even if you're taking a shot in Rodon, you're playing Rodon and then one of these like cheaper pitchers?
Most of my builds right now have at least one of the high-end guys, Gilbert and Sale being the headliners. For whatever reason, I'm getting less of Wheeler, which is not comfortable, but I don't think it's going to be that chalky anyway. I guess among the cheaper guys, the one that stands out a little bit would be Wacha. I think it's only because Tampa Bay strikes out a decent amount. He's pretty average in every regard, so it's not a conviction play, but he's 7K. The SB2s are all kind of clumped, like no one projects, except for Rodon, nobody projects significantly better than everybody else. I think from an ownership standpoint, the guy that's going to gain some steam is probably Davis Daniel against Oakland in Oakland. We saw him pitch well in the last game. People love to pick on Oakland. He's got like no sample size of data at the major league level, but one game log is enough for some people to jump on the bandwagon. So I think he could be somewhat popular. The guy I kind of want to play the most is Dean Kramer against Seattle just for the strikeout matchup. And he's cheap and he's been pretty decent in a small sample this season, but he hasn't pitched since like mid-May. So there's some uncertainty there from a pitch count standpoint. I think the bat has him at 86 or so, which, that's a guessing game essentially.
Right. I would say, I think that's optimistic. Like I wouldn't be shocked if he comes out. I wouldn't be shocked if he comes out at 80 pitches. And I also wouldn't be shocked if he came out after 5 innings, no matter what his pitch count is, even if it's like 62. Right. And on an 11 game slate, I harp on this all the time on the show that, this is a large enough slate that in GPPs, we're looking for a ceiling. And I tend to, when all these pitchers are all grouped in a kind of similar bucket, there's not that much distinction between them. I tend to side with either one of two things: highest K rate or the highest potential pitch count, because like one of those two things can bail you out even if they get into trouble, right? They get 2 or 3 earned runs. Well, if the guy strikes out 7, 8 guys, I don't mind at these price at 7K, or pitches 6 or 7 innings, strikes out 5, gives up 2 earned runs. I still don't mind at these prices. So for you, like the matchup wise, Kramer seems appealing, but how about like John Gray, 6,500? Here's someone that could do well or completely like fall apart. The Padres don't look nearly as good with Tatis out. Are you on the John Gray train? And the John Gray train is Carlos. He's basically sitting shotgun next to Carlos Rodon. If you really want to play the highest variance lineup at pitcher, just play Rodon and Gray together, and just hope you get the one time where they both do well. But you see in his game logs, he got killed by the Mets. He got killed by the Orioles. But this may actually be a better matchup for him.
It's fine from a run prevention standpoint, I think, in theory, but they are pretty low strikeout. So if he gives up some runs, it's going to be hard for him to really give you much upside, I think. We do have a guy, I think he's projected to start 4K flat for Detroit, Keider Montero. He pitched against the Phillies the other day. I think he threw a decent amount of pitches, 94. So he should, in theory, have a full leash. On this kind of slate where there's no clarity beyond Sale, essentially, I'm more than willing to punt all the way down with the 4K guy and hope for the best, even though it's not an ideal spot. I don't know anything about him as a pitcher. If he's good, he doesn't look particularly good, but this isn't the worst punt idea, I think, on a slate like this, where there's not much that stands out beyond the guys projecting for significant ownership.
I mean, giving up 4 runs to the Pirates and walking 3 Phillies doesn't give me all that much confidence. But remember, he's only 4K. I mean, if it's one of these slates where Montero puts up 12 points and all the SB2s, like no one of any ownership puts up like 20 plus, like you could be fine as long as you get your stacks right. But that would be the case. I'm personally not going there, but I could understand, a Sale Montero combination and then being able to, I mean, essentially kind of playing whatever stack you want on the bat end. But I do think that the correct construction today is the high-end option and one of these pitchers, right? I know Justin Carlucci has Pepio tagged against Kansas City. I mean, the total's low enough. I mean, and Kansas City hasn't been like a world beater that they were earlier in the season. I'm not against that either, but I mean, pitch count wise, I mean, he's not on the Dodgers anymore, so maybe it's a little bit different. But I mean, I don't mind Pep. I think they're all. I mean, let's before we move on to bats, how about the ones that are like slightly higher price, like I mentioned before, like the guys that are like good but in bad matchups. So like, I don't know if Jordan Hicks is like good, but I mean, he's better than like some of these other guys that we mentioned. Kikuchi against Houston at 8K, and especially like Shota against the Phillies. I mean, the Phillies can strike out. I mean, they may damage him, but I don't see any of these pitchers being owned. Like, I don't see anyone playing these. I mean, anyone, but these are like sub 5% owned pitchers that people are playing Sale plus Rodon. Like, you're playing the same type of lineup, but you're just playing Shota Imanaga instead of Rodon, or Kikuchi instead of Rodon. And I wouldn't be in any start. I'm never shocked if either of these two guys strike out eight, even against the Phillies or the Astros. And people are just going to stay. I think people are going to stay away from these pitchers. And I also think people are going to stay away from the Philly stacks and the Houston stacks because the pitchers aren't bad. I don't know which side of the spectrum you'd rather be on, the hitting side or the pitching side. But it seems like there's a lot of ambiguity in this like SB2 tier. Why not take a shot on, even though they're like maybe slightly overpriced?
Yeah, I think I'd be more inclined to take Imanaga because the Phillies are pretty shorthanded at the moment without Harper, Schwarber, Realmuto. He's been really bad. Like, he had an awesome start. He's had all his regression in the last month. So I think his stock is pretty down at the moment. He's still somewhat expensive. I don't think projection systems really know how to handle him since the sample is so tiny, since he came over this season as a rookie from Japan. I don't think he's a bad idea. Like, the Phillies don't have a lot of power in the lineup beyond, Turner and Castellanos, essentially. So it's fine. I'm not really inclined to pick on Houston with Kikuchi as much, even though he's a bit cheaper. Yeah, I can see the case for Imanaga because he's kind of a huge question mark. And like you said, no one's going to play him at all.
Okay, let's get to stacks. And you know what we do with stacks? We put them in tiers, A, B, C, D, F. We also adjust for ownership. So just because, a team projects well, if they're 1,000,000% owned, they're probably not going to be an A-tier team. And the same thing on the bottom. right? So the team may be horribly projected, but if they're going to be so low owned or provide so much leverage, maybe they move up in the tiers. And remember, these are 5-man stacks on DraftKings. If a team ranks like low, doesn't mean you can't play one batter. Doesn't mean you can't play 2 batters, but maybe you're not playing 5 from that team. So let's start at the top. The top of the list is going to be the game that's in Gores. It's the Brewers and the Rockies. Dakota Hudson, Colin Ray. These two teams project well above most on the slate. I'm assuming the Brewers are going to be the highest owned team on the slate, but maybe not high enough owned that they drop all the way down to the C tier. I think just like yesterday, the Brewers, solid B tier team. And would you put the Rockies kind of like, I'd rather play the Brewers than the Rockies, but I think the Rockies will be less owned than the Brewers.
For that reason, I would put Colorado in the A tier, even though it's probably blasphemy. I don't think they're going to get much ownership. They're projecting for some, like a little bit, but no one's even 10% on DK as of now. So Colin Ray is not a very imposing pitcher. Of course, it's not a good lineup, but the prices are also pretty high on at least the top half of the order for Colorado. And if people are paying up for 1 or 2 pitchers, they're certainly not stacking the Rockies since they can't. So I think I put them ahead of Milwaukee, but since it's Colorado and they're bad, I can see the case for them being a B tier team.
Right underneath them is the Los Angeles Dodgers against Christian Mina. They're not in cores, but they are the Dodgers. Their stack price is a little bit more expensive than the Brewers. I think they may just be as owned as the Rockies today.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going with the fact that the Rockies are under-owned, then maybe I put the Dodgers in the B tier and not the A tier, because I actually think the Brewers will be 1 and the Dodgers maybe 2. And that's why the Rockies are A tier and the Dodgers are B tier.
I think it's going to be the kind of thing we've seen lately where Ohtani gets a lot of ownership and he kind of carries the team's stack ownership percentage by himself. Like Freeman, Smith, and Hernandez are all pretty expensive, like you said, but it's cheap after that. Not that you feel great about the cheapies, especially with pinch hit risk, but it's not a great spot. I assume this is like a bullpen kind of game for Arizona, which is not the ideal situation to be picking on, especially if you're afraid of pinch hit stuff with them playing matchups and all that. So I see the case for B tier or A tier. I'm fine with either. I don't think they're going to be insanely owned tonight.
Well, I don't think anyone is going to be that insanely owned outside of maybe the Brewers, right? Okay, now we have this group in the middle. Like these are like the second tier. There's a kind of gap after the Dodgers. We got the Twins against Montero, the Braves against Hicks, the Blue Jays against Blanco, and the Rays against Waka. Outside of Montero, Hicks, pretty good pitcher. Blanco, although young, not a bad pitcher. Waka, run of the mill. Typically doesn't get blown up. But these stacks project pretty decently. We're starting to get outside of like the Brewers, Rockies, and Dodgers. Like the difference between like the top and the bottom is not like that big. But this is the top of that whole slew of teams. Twins, Braves, Blue Jays, Rays. The Blue Jays are just like cheaper than like everyone else, and if they're all going to project in a similar range, I know it's a broken record with the Blue Jays, but is today a Blue Jays day? Because sometimes, like if they get too owned, I'm like off of them.
Yeah.
But like the Braves and the Blue Jays are like two teams that owe me a lot of money, and
Definitely.
I'm back on board. Let's see if it's today.
It's weird too because Blanco's been really good, and I guess he kind of changed his pitch mix this season. So like he projects horribly. Like he's still been a bad pitcher over the years, but he's kind of exceeded the expectations. The underlying numbers still aren't very good though. And like you said, Toronto's cheap, so I probably will be on them today. I'm curious to see where the ownership will be because they are in a decent spot, but I'm not sure if people really want to pick on Blanco since they've seen how well he's pitched overall. I think B tier is fine just because we, for the tilt factor, we're sick of stacking them and getting 2 runs in the first inning and then nothing else. Atlanta, I'm not really interested in picking on Hicks that much. I understand it's a talented lineup with plenty of power potential, but bottom half's a little underwhelming at the moment. Yeah, probably a D tier team for me today.
Then we have the Twins and the Rays.
Twins, I can see the case for probably C tier. Depends on if Montero gets ownership. It doesn't really look like he will as of now, even though he's 4K. So not getting a ton of leverage there. Tampa Bay, I can see borderline BC. Waka is going to be, I think he's going to get some ownership in that gaggle of pitchers in the 7K range. So not a great lineup, but there is some leverage there. So C makes sense for them.
Okay,
Minnesota being C, I think, is just a case of them facing a not very good pitcher, and it's a decent spot.
Right. Okay, then we got teams that are decent teams, but against decent pitchers. The Phillies against Shota Imanaga, the Diamondbacks against Gavin Stone, the Royals against Pepio, and the Astros against Kikuchi. I'm not sure how much ownership any of these pitchers really have for leverage purposes. I don't want to pick on Shota Imanaga. I mean, I think the Phillies are, even the way they are, not F tier. I'd still put them in the D tier. But how about teams like do you want to take the Astros against no one? I don't think many people are going to play the Astros against Kikuchi. I don't think that many people. I think more people will play Pepio than the Royals. And I don't think anyone's playing the Diamondbacks. And I don't think anyone's playing Gavin Stone either. So where are we putting the Diamondbacks, the Royals, and the Astros?
I think you can make a case for F tier for Arizona, but Gavin Stone, like you said, not going to get ownership. They're also kind of underwhelming overall. So it's kind of just a spot no one's playing. D or F, I guess. I would put Houston in B, though. I think it is a decent enough offense. Kikuchi has had some home run issues over the years. Very low strikeout offense. These days, if you're putting the ball in play, I think you have kind of an edge on some of these higher strikeout teams, especially with the way strikeouts have gone up. So I think there's power potential here. And I think Houston, like you said, not going to get much ownership. On a slate without a lot of clarity beyond Coors, I would rate them pretty high tonight, I think.
And then we got the Royals against Pepio. I think I'd rather take a shot on Pepio than play the Royals today.
Yeah. I guess it depends on Pepio's ownership too. I agree that I'd rather play Pepio as of now. So
would you put the Royals could be, I still could maybe a C tier team.
Yeah.
Typically on 11-game slates, once they enter the D tier, I'm probably just in my 3 lineups, just not considering them at all. But
yeah, I think they're worthy of consideration. So C is probably fair.
The last team in this zone is the Yankees against Andrew Abbott. Abbott isn't going to be owned. The Yankees obviously have clear upside, and I think they may not even be in the top 5 ownership on the slate, and it's the Yankees. Do you put them in the tier do you consider them similar to the Astros of here's a team that could break the slate? I'm not scared of Andrew Abbott. Why not take a shot on the Yankees while everyone's going to the Dodgers and Coors?
Yeah, I can see that. Once you get past Soto and Judge, they're pretty cheap too. Torres and Davis are both in the mid 3Ks. LeMahieu 3K, Jahmai Jones 2,500. No one's going to play them. Aaron Judge hits a home run every day, so that's probably something worth noting. And yeah, Andrew Abbott's been pretty volatile. Strikeouts have come and gone. The walks are high. He's a fly ball guy. Obvious home run risk. Given the ownership, yeah, I'm kind of sold on them a little bit.
Then we have the 2 teams facing each other, the Angels and the A's. Angels are facing Joey Estes. The A's are facing Davis Daniel. I don't think many people are playing Joey Estes, and I'm not really interested in playing the Angels today. But maybe they're not a complete F tier team. So maybe in the D tier. But the A's are cheap. And you said before, Davis Daniel had a great first start. He had no sample size. I'm going to be bold and put the A's in the C tier and say, like, especially if you're playing like a Sale Gilbert combination, like you could easily do that. And if Davis Daniel comes in at 20% owned, that's just like the extra bonus on top of it.
Yeah, I think I'm a lot more inclined to play Oakland than Anaheim. So I'm with you. It's a bad park. I feel like I've played Oakland so much this season, and it's really defeating going back to the well again with them. But they haven't been atrocious. Like there have been times when they've, like last night, I think they hit a few home runs and stuff. So on occasion they can do it. And Daniel's going to be somewhat popular, I think, as an SP2. So that alone is the case to put them in the C tier. But Angels, bad lineup. Esta is not going to be owned, so no real edge on them.
Here's a team against a good pitcher that maybe has some ownership. Obviously, the Cubs against Wheeler. I'm just not in the business of stacking against Zach Wheeler on 11-game slate. So, like, to me, can you play a Cub? Can you play like Bush as a one? Like, I'm fine with playing Cubs as one-offs, but like if Wheeler fails, does he fail enough where the Cubs are the top stack of the day? I don't think so. So they're
yeah.
I think we both agree that the Cubs would be an F tier team just due to that.
Yeah, I think they're the worst team on the slate, and Wheeler's not even going to be that popular. Like he'll get ownership because he's Wheeler, but Sale's going to carry that tier, like we talked about. So there's really not a lot of leverage you're getting, I think, with the Cubs, and they're bad. So why bother?
Would you say the same about the Orioles? Because my inclination is that the Orioles are a good enough team that even against Logan Gilbert, I would take a shot. But they're also absurdly expensive.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like, I'd rather take a shot on the A. I'd rather say YOLO A's. I'd rather dive back into the Ponzi scheme of the Blue Jays, right? But I mean, the Orioles are just like they project. Like the A's have a higher projection raw point than the Orioles, and the Orioles are like twice as expensive. If the Orioles beat me today and people are like paying for that instead of the Brewers, God bless you. And just like I just move on. It's like if this was a 5-game slate, it's a different story. But 11-game slate, I put these in the same category. The Orioles are better than the Cubs, but I'm not going to stack against. It just doesn't seem.
There's no need.
Right. There's just no need. Right. For this price.
Yeah. Like I'd rather pay for Yankees or Houston if I'm paying up for something that's somewhat expensive. I just think they're more likely to do significant damage than the Orioles are, I think, against Gilbert in a pitcher-friendly park. So if they score 18 runs, they do. I was probably going to lose anyway, so on to tomorrow. But yeah, there's really no point in stacking Baltimore, I think, tonight.
I posed the notion of actually playing John Gray today. But if he doesn't, if you get implosion John Gray, the Padres are there to take advantage. I don't think the price of their stack is it's too expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a case they're a C tier team, but they're definitely not an F tier team because they're facing John Gray. I don't think I'm in my 3 lineups. I don't think I'm playing. I'm probably not playing the Padres today. But if you decided to, hey, I'm going to take a shot, I mean, I think they're at least D tier worthy.
I think a mini stack looks a little better. Like you can get Merrill, Cronenworth, and Machado or something like that. I don't think that's bad, but Gray doesn't look like he's going to be super popular. So there's not that angle to it. And they're expensive. So yeah, mini stack maybe, D tier seems about right.
Okay, 3 more tiers in this like bottom bunch of teams. We got the Texas Rangers against Adam Mazer, the Mariners against Dean Kramer, and the Tigers against David Festa. Now, the Tigers are the cheapest stack out of the bunch, so that makes me much more likely to play them. But I still think I'd rather play the A's today for a little bit more leverage than the Tigers. So I'd put the Tigers in the D tier, but the Rangers are a pretty good team, and the Mariners do have power. Mazer isn't going to be owned. Kramer's probably not going to be much owned. I think the Mariners are probably a little bit overpriced. I mean, can you make the case that these teams shouldn't be in the F tier, or are these D tier teams? I don't think either are a C tier team, but can you make the case for either the Rangers or the Mariners? And do you agree with the Tigers?
The Mariners I'm not really into. I think D or F is fine for them. Texas has a decently high total, and they're still without Seager, which is kind of watering down the stack, but that does make it cheaper overall. I don't mind them. I think you could make a case for C. They just kind of fall into no man's land. I don't think really anyone's going to play them, but it's not a bad spot. And Detroit, I also think you could make a case as a C tier team. Vesta's only started once in the majors. I think he's a decent prospect, but Detroit is just cheap. Like Veerling and Riley Green are the only guys over 4K on DK. Several hitters under 3K. So if you do want to find a way to pay up for two pitchers, stacking the Tigers is one way to do that. It's not fun, but kind of the nature of this slate is that once you get past Coors, it's just a bunch of jumbled nothing. So I don't mind Texas or Detroit. I'm less inclined to play Seattle.
Yeah, Detroit's never fun. I mean, that's the concept, the vomit stack. It makes you want to vomit, right? Last two teams, these would be the leverage teams. So I believe that Chris Sale is going to be over 40% owned. Being that that's the case on an 11-game slate, I'm not going there, but if you're playing large field contests, the Giants are a D tier team automatically just due to leverage. Just be aware, they're also the second lowest projected team on the slate. Don't expect, you're hoping that Sale just implodes. 40%, 50% of the field gets a negative score, and you're there to pick up and scoot past all the teams. It's not the direction I'm going today, but I don't think it's crazy to play the Giants today. With Taylor, your opinion on Carlos Rodon. The Reds are the lowest projected team in the bat, but even if Carlos Rodon is, let's say Carlos Rodon actually comes in at like 18% owned, is that enough leverage that puts the Reds on the D tier? Or do you expect his ownership to actually move up enough that, let's go and hope that Rodon is broken?
Yeah, it's really tough to figure out because, like, if Rodon had been pitching well lately, I would think his ownership's more likely being kind of depressed by the projections. Since he's been poor lately, I could see people jumping off the wagon, like with Heel yesterday, but he is cheap. Cincinnati has a low total. It's not a very impressive on-paper lineup. Once you get past like De La Cruz and Steer, it's really a bunch of filth. So I think in the end, Rodon's going to be 20+% owned, which I think puts the Reds on the D tier. I'm not going to stack them, I think, in single entry, but large field, I would be getting a little bit of them and San Francisco.
Okay, last question. We have the chalky side on the pitching, the chalky side on the hitting. I mean, I think we figured it out through talking through it for the past, 40 minutes. We had the choice of playing a Sale lineup, a Sale Rodon type of line. It doesn't have to be Rodon, but like, do you want to play? Would you rather have a lineup in smaller field contests, especially smaller field where the pitching ownership will get even more inflated? Would you rather play a Sale lineup today, or would you rather play a Coors lineup today? So if you're playing Sale, you can't play the Rockies, you can't play the Brewers. And if you're not playing Sale, you can play the Brewers or the Rockies. Which one would you rather
have? I think I would lean towards Sale, but I would probably not pair him with Rodon in a single entry. I'd probably just take a stab at one of those other mid 7K pitchers and just play another offense. Like, I'm not super geeked about Coors. Like, Hudson being a ground ball guy is just kind of annoying, even if he's bad and doesn't strike anyone out. I think there are enough other B-tier offenses like we have there that you can make a compelling stack with Sale and still paying up for, Yankees or Astros, Dodgers, that kind of thing.
Second question is, and I found another one. Would you rather play the A's or the Tigers in a Sale Rodon lineup, or would you rather play another team and not play Sale, or not play Rodon, or not play like is this a double barrel? Would you rather double barrel pitcher, or here's a better way to put it, because I think Sale is the priority. I think I'd rather have Sale in a vacuum amongst all of that. Would you rather double barrel pitcher today with the A's or the Tigers, or would you rather dinky do, like a Waka Pepio type of lineup and stack like Milwaukee plus the Dodge, like the whatever you want, Yankees plus, basically you have money for basically any two stacks. Which one would you rather? Would you rather take the shot on the cheapo A's, the cheapo Tigers? Or would you rather have like Judge and Ohtani in your lineup, but you're playing like Waka Pepio?
I think I would take the pitching and play the vomit stack on this slate, just because I don't really think teams like the Yankees or the Astros are in such good spots that even if you pay up for them, they're all that likely to pay off for you. I think there's more security in the pitching on this slate, and a team like Oakland. With Oakland, you're probably getting some leverage on Davis Daniel. So I think if it's Oakland or Detroit, I would pick Oakland, and I think I'm just more likely to do that than to double punt with like Montero, Waka, and pay up for Dodgers, Yankees tonight.
Well, the thing about the Blue Jays today is that you don't even have to double punt to stack the Blue Jays today. So if you don't even like the A's or the Tigers, the Blue Jays are an option. They got like cheap hitters at the bottom of the lineup. And you'll do like what I've done for most of the season and play the Blue Jays, and they score 2 runs. And you wonder what would happen. Why? Right? You look at their prices and go, like, if this was 2 years ago and you looked at the Blue Jays prices, you would think, like, why are they only getting like 7% ownership? Because like everyone's under 5K when they used to be way more expensive than that. But they're doing a little bit better. George Springer is not like a zombie anymore. He's at least somewhat productive.
Guerrero's hitting home runs again, it seems. So they've shown signs. I think the Rodon, going back to Rodon real quick, it's not scientific by any means, but if I was building a single entry, like for the 121, and I was deciding whether to play Rodon, one of the tiebreakers I would use would be, will I be more tilted if I play him and he gets -6, or will I be more tilted if I fade him and he gets 30? And I think as of now, I would be more tilted if I played him and he got -6, because I know the risk and just the way he's been. So I see the merit to his ownership because he's cheap and the spot is okay, but it scares me to death to roster him in ownership today.
Right, like I'm more with you. The thing is that I'm more tilted when you play Rodon and he gets -6. The thing is that people look at both sides, right? They look at, well, if I play him and get -6, well, how would I feel? Well, if I play him and he gets 30, how would I feel? The thing is that if you play him and get -6, right, you ain't winning a GPP, like, unless like, some odd stack or something like that. You're done. -6, you're dead. If Rodon goes out and puts up 30 fantasy points and you didn't play him, maybe Brian Pepio has 26 points. People don't think of the other scenario of like, well, I'm going to fade Sale and play Logan Gilbert, and then Sale has a great game, puts up 32 points. But Gilbert has a great game and puts up like 28.5 points, and it's like, at least you have the option there. But when like you play a guy and he gets -6, like, well,
you're cooked.
You're done. Especially if the cards flip over and you're like, okay, I'm gonna play Carlos Rodon and it's like 38% owned. What? Uh-oh.
Right.
Whoops.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of volatility in the ownership, and I think he's going to be higher than we currently have him, which is another case to come in at least a little under the field if it's a multi-entry situation.
Okay, so remember, Grinders Live later today, 5 p.m. Eastern. That's followed immediately by Crunch Time at 6:15 or 6:20. The dean and the guys, they'll break down the slate in a much more detail, give you an update on the weather. Taylor, you got what other content are you doing? It's baseball season only, pretty much, right? I mean, this is kind of like July and August is like, yay, Wimbledon, like it's kind of like WNBA. So what are you doing for July and August content wise?
Mainly weekend MLB written stuff like top stacks and expert survey, that kind of thing. Occasional filling in on stuff. I have some best ball stuff also, kind of on Fantasy Labs / RG. So a little bit of that, dabbling in that on occasion.
So check that out. Become a RotoGrinders Premium member. Get all of our projections, all of our ownership, all of our premium content, our Plate IQ tools, all of our research tools, all props, pick'em tools, everything that you'll possibly need to play DFS, to bet on props, to play some pick'em on Prize Picks, Underdog, Pick 6 on DraftKings. We have stuff. We have cricket pick'em projections. Okay, that's how much stuff we had. WNBA. We got everything here. So sign up. Click on that link in the description. Get $40 off your first month. I'll be back tomorrow. It won't be this show. It'll be July 4th. I'll be on with Dean for Grinders Live. I think we'll have a July 4th inspired tier list tomorrow, and get you started with all the festivities. Just make sure you're not setting off fireworks at 2 a.m. because that sucks. And I will see you tomorrow. Talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy props and pick'em on RotoGrinders today. I think Steve fell asleep.
I think so. It's just kind of awkward now at this point.
Awkward.
Steve.